Top story this hour, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has departed for Bali, where he will be taking part in the high-stakes G20 Summit. Prime Minister Modi will be in Indonesia till the 16th of November and has a very packed schedule for his three-day visit. There will be a summit session, meetups with the Indian diaspora, a flurry of bilaterals. This will be the second time this year that the Indian Prime Minister will be under the same roof as Chinese President Xi Jinping, raising questions as to whether the two will hold talks or not. As of now, the talks seem uncertain. New Delhi says that bilateral engagements with the other leaders are still in the process of being scheduled, and a meet-up with Xi Jinping is something which remains under question. Leaders of Asia's two big powers have not held a face-to-face meeting since April 2020, and if the talks do happen, then it will be the first such occasion after the military standoff along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh that started 2 years ago. The last time the two leaders were present at the same event was during the SCO Summit, where both Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping attended the annual summit in Samarkand. There were no talks, bilateral talks between the two sides then as well. The last bilateral the two leaders held was during the BRICS Summit held in Brazil in November 2019, before which they had an informal summit at a seaside resort in India's Mahabalipuram in October 2019. Now, to get us the latest on this, we're being joined by Principal Diplomatic Correspondent Siddhant Sibal. Siddhant, thank you for joining us. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on his way to Bali and he has a packed schedule there. What can you tell us of the bilaterals that have been scheduled so far? Of course, one bilateral that everyone's looking out for is between India and China. Is that likely to happen?
Well, it's almost no possibility that there will be any bilateral between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping. This was the second time both the leaders will be face-to-face since the Galwan incident. They've already been at the SCO Summit in Samarkand, where there were no bilateral meetings, and it is expected that this time as well there will be no bilateral meetings. Largely, around 10 bilateral meetings are confirmed or expected to happen, including with the Spanish leader, Australian Prime Minister, with the Singaporean leadership, and also the British Prime Minister and the French President. Now, the focus, of course, will be, or perhaps the key highlight will be the meeting with the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, given that, of course, this is their first in-person meeting since Rishi became the Prime Minister, but also the fact that he's an Indian origin Prime Minister of UK, and this is something that will be, of course, in the backdrop. But largely, it's a packed schedule for the Indian Prime Minister, whether it's the bilaterals, participation in the G20 meeting, or of course the meeting with the Indian diaspora, which happens on Tuesday.
Right, absolutely, Siddhant. That being said, what are some of the key issues that will top the agenda for India here?
Well, for India, the biggest moment of significance is the handing over of the presidency of the grouping. India chairs the presidency from 1st of December for a period of 1 year, and we know that it's for the first time that India will be chairing the presidency of the grouping since the formation of the grouping and of course the elevation of the grouping at the leaders level way back in 2008 after the financial crisis. But of course, a lot of bilateral meetings and moment for the Indian Prime Minister to engage with his counterparts and reaffirm how the relationship has been going forward. But of course, the fact that there is no meeting with the Chinese side is something that will be one of the key points as well, given the fact that it shows that how relationship hasn't been doing very well.
Right, absolutely, Siddhant. Thank you so much for joining us on that, but do stay on with us. We will come back to you. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.